Okay, so I'm going to be reviewing every single film I see in 2019, and because of terrible film distribution in this country, this will be leaking over into 2020, mainly during the Oscar season. Well, new year, new me, let's try this again. Now, leading up to February 13th, this film to me was an absolute joke, and many people did feel that same way from its announcement to its release, and I really don't need to go into why people thought this was going to be a complete train wreck. So I wasn't really going into this film expecting an amazing movie, but when it came out, people were surprisingly really liking it. So that did somewhat boost my attitude walking in, and after it was finished, all I can say is, it was fine. Sonic the Hedgehog is not a bad film, but it's also not really a good film either. It's right on that thin line in between. As for all its good aspects, it is immediately countered by a negative, and though I do think there are more noticeable flaws than positives, I did not leave the cinema with a sour taste in my mouth. When it comes to the question whether this is a faithful adaptation of the Sonic franchise, my answer would be that Sonic as a character was done really well, but the narrative and setting was quite cookie cutter and never felt like the ideal location to set a Sonic film. The plot has a very basic structure, and halfway through I realized I was basically watching a better version of the Smurfs movie, as it followed a very recognizable formula a lot of kids films based primarily on animated properties use as a safe way of adapting them, and that's taking said property out of the environment you normally imagine them in and putting them in suburbia. If you look at the script as a whole and disregard a few specific elements, you can pretty much make the same film with a completely different character and no one would notice it was a copy-paste. And that's the main reason why this film to me is honestly quite forgettable. One of the only really good parts of the film is of course the title character. Ben Schwartz did an amazing job with Sonic. His voice was great, his energy was high, he was the most entertaining part of the whole film, and a majority of his humour hits, but this is mainly due to his performance, as many of the jokes were just pop culture references and incredibly hand-fisted product placement. And though it can get a bit annoying, his charisma does allow for some really good moments like the biker bar scene, which is definitely the best part of the film. Also, the integration of Sonic references didn't feel forced and resulted in a few funny moments, primarily the inclusion of the Sonic meme, which was hilarious. I like the scene where he gets his shoes, I like the chili dog reference, I like how they didn't try to include more Sonic characters but instead decided to focus on what's basically an origin story without everything seeming bloated. And at the beginning of the film we see Green Hill Zone, and though I would have liked a bit more colour, it looked great and is one of the most accurate film adapted locations based off a video game. But we only see it for around 3 minutes during the prologue, which was incredibly rushed to get to the main story. We learn that Sonic was raised by an owl who is described as having a very close connection with him, mainly as a parental figure, but besides Sonic handing her a flower, they are given no chemistry, and 1 minute after she is introduced, she dies. The problem is that we are given no real reason to care about this character who basically affects the whole film, and there's no expository dialogue later on which could have given more insight to their relationship. All the characters besides Sonic and Robotnik were fine, and all the acting from them was incredibly serviceable. Nothing outstanding, nothing amazing, nothing memorable, and nothing really bad. If you want me to get picky, Tika Sumpter was maybe the closest to a bad performance just for being quite bland, but she wasn't in the film for that long and she had some good moments with James Marsden near the beginning which conveyed a well-established relationship between them. James Marsden, who is an actor I quite like in a lot of things, I like him in X-Men, Enchanted, Westworld, and he's not bad in this film. He brings a small amount of charm and charisma to his role and does have some funny moments, but his character is incredibly cliche and there's nothing interesting about him that makes him stand out as being memorable. And also, on a side note, while writing this I realized that he may have already played this character 9 years ago, but I can't confirm that because I haven't seen Hop. But just looking at the trailer, it's literally the same character and again pretty much the same basic outline for this film's plot. Now, everyone loves Jim Carrey as Dr. Robotnik. I'm kinda mixed. Carrey is really giving his all in this role and he's very much returning to his early work and channeling his wacky over-the-top performances from the early 90s like Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura and The Mask. And at points in this film, he is very entertaining, he looks like he's having the time of his life, he has some good jokes, and his little dance scene is one of the film's highlights. But I thought there were a lot of scenes that went on for way too long, and as a result, his performance started to get very grating and annoying to the point where I just wanted to shift focus to other characters. And another aspect that his performance takes away is making him a legitimate threat. I'm not expecting Thanos levels of intimidating, and Robotnik has always been a very over-the-top villain, but I would have liked a little more tension and and a better blend of comedic and serious elements towards his character, because by the end I just couldn't take him. The CGI is very inconsistent, but I do have a theory on why this could be the case. Now, Sonic looks really good. His model is consistent, he for the most time feels like he's really there, his texture is well done, and again, it's a massive improvement from the original design. But Robotnik's robots look like crap. The textures are way too smooth, and as a result they feel incredibly disconnected to any environment they inhabit, mainly due to shading and depth. There was never one shot where they didn't look fake, and when Robotnik is inside his ship, you can see smear lines and inconsistent lighting regarding the environment around him. But my theory is that this was released partially unfinished. The animators would have spent so much time having to reanimate Sonic in the shortest time possible, to the point where no employee was working below 10 hours a day, and as a result all other visual effects may have been put to the side. And with Moving Picture Company Vancouver, who animated the film, shutting down right before Christmas and laying off all their workers, it would have resulted in finalized touch-ups never being done or properly looked over. Now again, this is just my theory, but I honestly do believe this is the case, as the differing quality between Sonic and the robots was very dramatic. Sonic is also a very inconsistent character when it comes to certain moments in the film. Nearing the end of the first act, he gets shot in the leg by a tranquilizer, and in the pursuing scenes it is made clear that Sonic can't run or move his legs, which not only creates an obstacle to overcome but also sets up the road trip part of the film. But 5 minutes later, when he leaves the town, he is back to normal, even though they made a big deal about it 5 minutes prior. So the initial obstacle is already completed, and for the rest of the film, besides Robotnik, he has nothing interesting to overcome to help him grow as a character. And on that topic, the film shows that he can basically slow down time and pull a Quicksilver, as demonstrated in 2 scenes. But the film just decides to constantly limit his abilities for the sake of including more characters in the action. The guy can run up walls, but when he needs to get to a rooftop, he has to be smuggled in a bag. It's just distracting, where you know this character can easily complete a task, but the director decides to limit his abilities for no reason but to pad runtime. And on the topic of music, I would have really liked rearranged Sonic themes integrated into the soundtrack, which would have added some more fun references and create a more enduring score. But instead we got Green Hill Zone at the end, which was pretty good, and a really bland stock action soundtrack for the rest. So I'm hoping the hinted at sequel takes more advantage of Sonic's repertoire. So to end this off, Sonic the Hedgehog is a very basic kids film which incorporates many overused cliches of the genre but fails to put any interesting spins on them. But in its defense, a few good jokes, some funny visual comedy, and an entertaining main protagonist did help it gain some points, and I never really felt bored while watching it. And even though it could have turned out way worse, I don't think I would watch it again on my own terms unless they were going to release the original cut just for curiosity's sake. So the film isn't bad, but it's just kind of forgettable.